Been spending the past couple of days going down quite a weird rabbit hole because recently someone commented about Russian psychonetics on one of my videos, okay? They told me to look into Russian psychonetics. I've never heard of that. It's not the same as this popular book with like a similar name. I don't know if you've heard of that shit, but I can't find the comment they left now. I even searched up in the YouTube comment thing. I can't find it, but I swear someone commented that. So I started looking into it, and it was basically a group of techniques that this Russian, of course it's a fucking Russian, they're always doing shit like this. There's always like some weird cults or like lucid dreaming or some shit the Russians are doing. His name is Dr. Oleg Bakhtiarov. You know, there's so many names in this that I won't be able to pronounce, I'm sorry. But he made these techniques, psychonetics, which are basically about dealing with high stress situations, and it was actually used for the military, in combat. And the reason he made these techniques, I think, was for the Soviet military, which there's a bunch of weird shit surrounding all these psychonetics things, which I'll get into. But it can also be used for like software engineering and consciousness, expanding consciousness, and doing things that require you to like spread your attention instead of focusing on one thing, if that makes sense. And it can be used to improve your creativity. And there was even some people talking about on these little niche underground forums, which are the only places I saw other people speaking about psychonetics, mentioned of supernatural like abilities. For example, someone talked about how he had heard that one guy could see a really good knife thrower in the military, and then after an hour of meditation and implementing psychonetic practices, he could master knife throwing just from watching this fucking guy do it, bro. After an hour of meditation and having like flu-like symptoms, he was really good at that. And so that guy on that forum it was just a comment. He was saying he didn't know if that shit was true, but he had heard a lot of weird shit about psychonetics. Now, I will briefly go over the techniques because I actually think that the lore and the history behind it is more interesting. It involves like the government, the military, terrorism, secret languages. Like, there's a bunch of really strange shit surrounding this, bro. But the main technique, right? And I looked through a whole document and I even tried some of these. The main technique of psychonetics is deconcentration of attention. And this is when you deconcentrate your attention. Wow. Who could have fucking thought, bro? But this is what it is like. So when you normally focus on one thing, and I actually thought this was funny because it was similar to the dream yoga shit I talked about before. It was like the opposite of focusing on one thing. So instead of doing that, the exercise basically had you look at like a square of numbers or some shit and focus your vision on the center of it. And instead of focusing on it, you want to put your attention, and I'll send you the link to all this shit if you want to do the exercises. You put your attention on like the top left corner without moving your eyes to the top left corner. So you can even do this now without looking at anything. It's like you can, if I'm staring at you, right, I can put my attention to the left, but I'm still staring at you. Like, I'm not putting my eyes there. And like the whole point of this was just like, if you get really good at deconcentrating your attention, you can kind of do things like you can kind of perform well in combat. Or there was an example of a diver who used this to, like, I guess, get through really high stress situations underwater, because instead of just focusing on one thing at once, you need to focus on like 8 different things at once, right? And most people think this is impossible, but after training deconcentration of attention, apparently you will get really good at this. And one example he gave was like people who need to look at nuclear reactors and shit and monitor that because they have to look at like fucking 50 different things at once, right? And you can't do that if you just focus on one thing. So you need to spread your attention. And if you get really good at this, you will apparently be able to like pick out objects in your field of vision without looking at anything. So if you're just looking straight, you will be able to pick out an object from your left vision. Like, I don't know if this sounds really useful, but like there was just a bunch of weird shit. And I will talk about some of the weird abilities, or not weird, but like cool abilities people apparently got from these techniques, right? And another one of the techniques was dealing with perceptual uncertainties. And this is when, for example, you look at an illusion that has 2 possible ways to look at it. For example, if you look at like a 2D drawing of a 3D cube, and there's like different ways to look at it. So sometimes the bottom left side will seem to be at the front, and sometimes the top right side will seem to be at the front right, and then it kind of switches between your vision because there's two ways to perceive it. This is a perceptual uncertainty. And so the exercise he said was to look at this cube or any other illusion. Sorry, I'm speaking so quick. I need to stop speaking so quick. This is so fucking bad. I keep doing this recently. His technique was to look at this cube and basically control how your brain is seeing it, which is actually difficult, sorry, because I spent like an hour looking at this fuck-ass cube, bro, and I really struggled to control it. But apparently, once again, this will unlock kind of supernatural-like abilities where you can look at something and understand it and understand its depth on like a whole deeper level. Now, to be honest, this guy was kind of vague posting. This guy was kind of fucking vague posting about what kind of shit this unlocked. Everyone was very vague about this, right? And there was also some other shit like will meditation, which is meditating on your will or something. I don't fucking know. And there was a bunch of other strange exercises, but I feel like the history, as I said, is actually more interesting than the actual like techniques because it's very weird. And as I said, it involves a lot of strange shit. Let me get water. Sorry, I speak too quickly. But yeah, I need to speak about the history of this because it's quite peculiar. And to do that though, I need to speak about a whole nother person and kind of tie it in. And this guy is called John Ojijada, I think it is. I don't know how to pronounce his name once again. But I'll just call him John. This guy John was an American. And this may at first seem like a whole different story, but this all connects with the psychonetic Russians, okay? So this guy John, he was really into creating languages ever since he was a kid. This is an American. And he actually had a twin, and he created a language with his twin that they spoke with each other in. And I actually didn't know this, but that's a thing called cryptophasia, bro. That's literally a fucking thing. You know, bro, apparently 50% of twins have a made-up language. Can you fucking believe that? Like, that's crazy. Like, they just make it up by themselves. Like, it's just natural for them. That was insane. I had never heard that. But I don't know if it stemmed from that, but this guy just had a crazy interest in languages, and ever since he was like a teenager, he was making up his own languages, and then he actually started doing a PhD to like research languages. I don't know the exact name of it, but the problem was he didn't have enough money to do the full PhD, so he had to become a truck driver. And he kept saying to himself as he was like being a truck driver, I'm gonna go back and do the PhD and whatever. But he never ended up being able to go and do it. I guess he didn't ever get enough money, or kind of just that shit passed, right? But despite that, even though he was a truck driver, kind of in secret without anyone knowing, he was working on a language called Ithkuil, I think it is. I think that's how you pronounce it, Ithkuil. Now, this language, oh, there's some interesting shit about this, bro. There's some interesting shit about this. He actually turned up at a lot of language conferences where it was like full of people who created their own languages. And this John guy, he was smart. He was wicked smart, bro. Like, he would start speaking at a conference and speak a made-up language of someone in the audience, and the person in the audience, that would have been the first time they had heard someone speak their made-up language. So John, this motherfucker just learned languages so quickly and knew everything about languages, and he spent decades making this language of his Ithkuil, right? He spent decades on it. And so, after a while of this, he gets a call from the University of Effective Development, I think it was called, which was somewhere in Russia or Ukraine. I don't know. Like, right now it'd be a bit hazy if it was Russian or Ukrainian. I don't really know. It was probably Russian. And the University of Effective Development was ran by the Dr. Oleg guy, right? And this is where a bunch of students were training psychonetics. So they had a whole fucking X-Men Academy, bro. And so Dr. Oleg kind of sends a message to this John guy, and he's saying like, we want to talk to you at the University of Effective Development. We want to arrange a trip for you, right? And so this John guy's like, this is fucking crazy because no one knows about my language. I mean, he did write a whole website about his language, but it never really went mainstream or anything. It was just known amongst a bunch of like little niche motherfuckers who were into languages. So he receives this email asking him to go on a trip to like some Ukrainian country or whatever. So he goes there with a translator because he can't speak Russian. And I think the Dr. Oleg guy says that he wanted John to speak about Ithkuil, his language, at this conference. And so they touch down at this Ukrainian airport or whatever, and they meet with a young woman from the University of Effective Development. And this young woman tells John that they've been learning his language for the past 2 years, bro. She tells him, we've been learning your language for the past 2 years, and amongst us, you are a legend, bro. She didn't say bro, but she said that to him, right? And obviously John is like, what the fuck? I've never heard of these people. I had no idea a bunch of Russian students were learning my language. Why are they doing this? What's happening? Kind of thing. So that whole thing happens, right? And John does a little like press conference. He speaks about his language in front of these Russian students, these psychonetic guys. And later in the night, he's in a room with Dr. Oleg, and Dr. Oleg is telling him about psychonetics and telling John about the psychonetic techniques and explaining deconcentration of attention to him. He just got up a laptop and showed him the shit. Now, John's looking at this like, he's like, okay, interesting, but he's also saying like, why are these people so interested in my language? Why are these Russians involved in this weird shit that he didn't understand? Why are they involved in my language, right? So he didn't really get that, but he said it was funny because as the night went on, John was sitting on a sofa with Russian students at his feet, like looking at every word he was saying and paying close attention to him as if he was a fucking god, right? So they adored him. These Russians he had never heard about adored John. They loved his language because his language, Ithkuil, right, was so unique and it's really strange. Like, you can basically convey a really, really complex like English sentence in like one Ithkuil word, which looks very complex to say. So I think that's why the Psychonetics liked it, because it was a way for them to convey very complex things that were hard to do in normal English in Ithkuil. So they basically after that required every Russian student at the University of Effective Development to learn this language, this made up language. And John was considered a legend among them, right? And John said after this, he cried. He literally cried because for decades, he'd been working on this shit underground. He'd been a truck driver with no renown. Oh, that fucking rhymed. That rhymed, bro. I'm so poetic. But yeah, he'd been doing this. He got no recognition. And now all of a sudden, there's hundreds of Russian students required to learn his language. So that made him cry and he went home to America. And then a time passed and he got invited to another conference in Ukraine. This was somewhere in Ukraine. I don't remember if I wrote down the exact place, but this was another psychonetic conference, right? And this was when things got much more interesting and they found out a lot more interesting information. When John was sitting with his translator in the seats watching the conference, and Dr. Oleg was speaking, and they started, I don't know if it was John or the translator, but one of them started searching up Dr. Oleg as he was speaking, and they found out some weird shit as well. Actually, I should speak before about what Dr. Oleg told John. This is what Dr. Oleg told John before this conference, right? Dr. Oleg told John that he had been working, I think, as a medical student in the Soviet Union, but he got expelled from the college for distributing provocative literature, whatever the fuck that means. I don't know what that means, but Dr. Oleg got expelled for that, right? And then after that, the KGB, which of course is like the Russian police or security services or whatever, they said Dr. Oleg was politically unreliable, whatever that meant. Keep in mind, Dr. Oleg is telling all this to John. He's being completely honest about this. So he was called political unreliable and he got imprisoned for 2 fucking years. And then after he got imprisoned, he got let out and then he became a psychologist. He got into psychology. And from there sprung psychonetics once he got into psychology. And when he created Psychonetics, ironically, even though he got arrested by the government, the Soviet Union then wanted him to teach Psychonetics to their military, right? And teach them that shit. So then he started working for the government. So that's basically how Psychonetics came about. That's like the crazy lore about it. So there's that whole thing Dr. Oleg told John. Okay, now let's continue to the press conference when John was watching Dr. Oleg speak and he was on a laptop reading Russian articles and getting them translated and finding out some more weird shit about Dr. Oleg that the man didn't feel it was necessary to tell John before, right? Now he finds Dr. Oleg has a lot of weird theories and shit in articles and on blog posts. Basically, Dr. Oleg wanted to create some kind of state where there were Russians, Ukrainians, and I think combined with some more regions from that area. And he was also saying some shit that kind of made John uncomfortable, when he was reading it. And this is what Dr. Oleg was saying in interviews. He was saying he wanted to develop an intellectual special forces that can bring about the establishment of a great power in Greater Russia and give birth to a new order, a new race as well, that can be called superhuman. So this Dr. Oleg guy literally wanted to create a race of fucking superhumans through his psychonetic techniques, bro. And so John saw this and he was uncomfortable. He was like, what the fuck? I didn't know this guy wanted to create some superhuman race and a super state. But you know, the worst thing or the weirdest thing happens next. Another guy gets up on stage. What is his name? I wrote it down. His name is Garkovenko. Okay, so this guy was, the whole time as he was seated, recording the thing with a little camcorder, right? And so when he gets called up to stage, he goes on and he's still holding the fucking camera recorder. This dude is fucking talking on stage about Psychonetics while recording with his fucking camera recorder, like recording the crowd. And this makes John uncomfortable once again. He's like, why the fuck is this Russian recording me? And so Garkovenko starts talking about how he was recently in prison, bro, and he was reading Dr. Oleg's book in prison and looking at the psychonetic techniques, and he starts talking about expanding consciousness and shit because he was reading all about that in prison. And John was like, why the fuck was this guy in prison? Who is this guy? And so the translator's face, the translator is obviously Russian, his face goes pale seeing this guy Garkovenko on the stage. And you know why it goes pale? Is because he turns to John and he says to John, you know this guy is like the number 2 terrorist in Ukraine right now? He literally says that to John. John's like, what the fuck? And John starts typing on his laptop and reading about this Garkovenko guy, and he sees, yes, this guy has been arrested several times on terrorism and weird shit, and he's been involved in far-right terrorist groups and all this stuff. And this is just making John so uncomfortable, combined with what he read on Dr. Oleg. And he was like, what the fuck? Why are they using my language to create some super state and super race of supernatural motherfuckers? So after this, Dr. Oleg goes home. He goes home, right? And he's telling Dr. Oleg, like, I don't want to be involved in this anymore. This is all sus. And you know what is funny? After that, he reads the journal of Garkovenko. Garkovenko posted a blog about his experience at the conference. And you know what he's saying on his blog? He's saying, so I saw some Americans in the crowd, and he posted the video of his camera recorder that he was using on the stage. And he's like, these guys were definitely from the Pentagon. These guys were definitely fucking agents, bro. This guy's posting on this blog saying, so there were these Americans and they were definitely agents. They were asking all the questions someone from the Pentagon will ask. So now you have the Russian terrorist was like, he was fully convinced John, the creator of Ithkuil and the translator, was working for the CIA, and that they came to Russia just to attend the Psychonetics conference, just to like get shit out for the CIA and find out what they knew. So that's all I have of that. But like, that was just the rabbit hole I've been going down the past couple days. Oh, it doesn't end there. Fuck, there was another thing I forgot. It doesn't end there. So Dr. Oleg, right? Fucking a few years after that, he got arrested in Ukraine for hiring 200 people to try and overthrow, I think, the Russian embassy or the Ukrainian embassy or some shit like that. There was like a plot to overthrow a government building in Ukraine, I think for Russia, and apparently he was gonna hire 200 people and pay them $500, and they got Molotovs and cocktails and all that shit. He got arrested for that. So like, what the fuck's going on? And I saw some guy wrote an article where he was saying the 200 people Oleg was gonna hire for that plot were probably the Psychonetics students. So this guy was involved in some X-Men shit where he was getting his students reportedly to try and overthrow a government building after learning all these psychonetic techniques. What the fuck is happening in Russia, bro? What the fuck is happening in Ukraine? I'm sorry this shit's hyping me up, but like, what is going on here? But that's the rabbit hole I went down. Sorry, I'm kind of like rambling. It's all over the place. That shit's just very interesting, but farewell. Do not join the Discord. This shit's making me laugh because of like how fucking weird it is. But do not join the Discord. Leave me a mean comment. I did not kill myself, okay? I'm not suicidal. If I fucking hang myself after revealing this information, I am not suicidal. Goodbye. Unsubscribe. Dislike the video. I love you. I love you.